And my grandfather was a homicide detective. He was a police officer. So, but this particular situation, okay. I've worked in human rights and elections. I worked in Bosnia. I worked in a place called Srebrenica. I remember one time, well, it was not in Srebrenica, but in another community, another village nearby, where U.S. military was responsible for that part of Bosnia. This goes back to the immediate post-war time, and they had the S4 troops from NATO, stabilization force, they're called. And so I happened to be in a sector that was U.S. military, S4 troops. And I'm working in the local municipal building with the local people. They're trying to reestablish their local government. And the main part of that was to reestablish the ability to vote, which I'm talking about November 4th, because that's at the heart. Everything that is at the heart, to show up to vote because you care, because you understand that's all they ask of you as a citizen. Well, not only that, but actually you need to run for office too, and you need to know what the issues are. But anyway, so these American soldiers come through on their patrol, and Lord have mercy, but this one soldier, he was carrying a firearm. The local people freaked out. They did not, I don't know how to describe it, but because they had just come out of an armed conflict where neighbors killed each other, a civil war. And it was against the rules of S4. They were not supposed to bring firearms into buildings on their patrol, but this dude did, a young white American soldier. And everybody in the building noticed it. We are immune. We are not immune, impervious. We have forgotten something. To even talk about murder by gun, I don't care if it's hunting rifle or whatever. But the United States is off the track. And I had a total stranger, Scottish white man, on a plane flight in Africa. Some years ago, this man, he decided to chat me up. I'm sitting by the window, the dude sits beside me. He had started talking to me in the terminal, which is a regional terminal, and not an international flight, not a long flight. Nice person. And the dude says, when he finds out I live in Italy also, he says, well, you better stay in Italy because there's going to be a race war.
But what does this have to do with the question of whether the motive is necessary?
This kind of violence, I can't deal, Gary, I think to my ear, it was sounding like you're doing both sidesism. And that's far from the way it actually is. It's so far. As a child, I witnessed 4 political assassinations, was it? President Kennedy, Malcolm X. Some people wouldn't count, but he counts.
So you're kind of making the point that I've been trying to make by suggesting that we have to tally up how many political assassinations were made of people on the left, and how many political assassinations have been made of people on the right, and that will give us a clear picture of where the ill is in our society. So if more people on the left,
me and one other black girl, we integrated our junior high and high school in Pennsylvania, and it's like so Republican and stuff. Some of these kids, I mean, I knew these people. They were not all friends of mine. And some of them were not interested in being friends with me because I was a black person. And here we are.
We know that there's racism that is ingrained in our society.
It's beyond that. It's beyond that. What it is, and Nancy McLean's book, Democracy in Chains, the deep history of the radical right's stealth plan for America.
So just to sum up, it does matter, and what matters is that the right is the dirty side of the aisle, because that's where all this is coming from. Is that your argument?
Okay. What I'm saying is that, as some people say, because I vote, but it's really, this is like so complicated, so complex. But we have a 34-time convicted felon in the White House.
We know all that, but that's not what we're here to discuss today. We've discussed that ad nauseum on the stage. The question is, and if you could focus on the question, you said that you saw the title of the room and it prompted. You said that you saw the title of the room and it prompted you to come up on the stage. And thus far, unless I am totally
on the stage, I was invited on the stage.
That's fine. I'm just saying. I don't know how you got on the stage, whether you were invited on the stage or whether you raised your hand. Great. That's great. It doesn't matter to me whether you were invited or not.
You spent 8 minutes. I didn't finish what I was saying, but if this is the end of it, then I'll shut my mouth.
I'm not asking you to shut your mouth. I'm asking to try to bring this around and focus at the topic at hand, not whether Donald Trump is a felon.
Because this is not about this Robinson. What's his name?
What is it about? What is it about? Tell me very succinctly right now.
It's about the breakdown of the United States. And right now we're talking about a breakdown on the right, because this was not somebody from the left that shot this fellow.
Okay, you know that. You know that. You know that. How do you know that? How do you know that?
Judge Luttig, his own grandmother talked about the situation.
How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that?
Have the FBI investigated. But let me make one more point, and then I'm going to leave it alone, because you want to see it a certain way. And
no, it's not that I want to see it a certain way. I want you to address the issue.
Does not count.
I want you to address the issue.
Told us, Judge Luttig said in the summer of 2022, after the January 6th killings, they were killings too, but the attack on the Capitol, where I used to work, he said that Donald Trump and his supporters and allies are a clear and present danger to Americans.
And that's why Charlie Kirk is dead today.
Yes, because he part of that whole thing.
Okay. Yeah. So he was a victim of his support for the evil Republican. Somebody
quoted what he said about George Floyd, which was so tragic.
I quoted what he said about George Floyd, by the way.
No, I didn't hear. I'm talking about something I read earlier.
I quoted it yesterday. I don't remember what it was on.
I wasn't here yesterday. I'm talking about something I saw.
I'm just saying that I recognize that. So your argument is.
I'm talking to you. There's other people on here too.
I know that, Marion. Quit being so contentious.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay. As best as I can tell, Marion just illustrated the problem. She knows for a fact that the right is responsible for all the evil in the United States. And I'm sure some come up to the stage and say that they know for a fact that the left is responsible for the evil in the United States. That's the problem, in my humble opinion. That's not to say that the points that Marion raised are not accurate. I'm not saying that, and I don't want to be represented in my admonishment of the discourse. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that she's got it in her mind, and maybe she's right, that all the problems of our society come from the right, just like Donald Trump and his followers have it in their mind, and maybe they're right, that all problems of society come from the left. And so long as we continue to do this finger pointing, and you're wrong, no, you're wrong, we're never going to resolve the problem. And I really fear that there will be more political violence in our society. That's my Nostradamus prediction. I'm not qualified to do so, but that's my fear anyway. Dude.
Hi, Gary. I just want to start off saying I love people who identify as Republican, and I also love people that identify as Democrat.
You're trying to play both sides, dude. How can you do that?
Well, it has to do with love and compassion, I guess, and common good. country, right? And the democracy works in a healthy way when people actually share common ground and have compassion for one another and actually work together, even through their differences. Actually, it's interesting. I heard from older generations growing up that that the youth has lost the ability to sit down at the table and have a coffee and not get upset or storm off or call the other person names. It seems like it's not even a generational problem anymore, that it's like a common problem, that people in all generations who are indoctrinated and partisan treat each other terribly. And it's interesting how many people identify as having religious views, or even just how many people do not identify as having religious views, yet both seem to, when it comes to the right and left religion that they are supporting, they seem to act just like religious hypocrites, indoctrinated religious hypocrites who have no love or compassion for the common citizen.
To your point, dude, if you don't mind me interjecting.
That's all my point is that.
I just want to underscore and illustrate this with something that happened yesterday. Okay, thank you very much. I hate that when I go to this website, it talks. I didn't ask this website to talk. Shut up. Right. Oh my God, stop. Stop. I stopped and it's still talking. Okay. What you're hearing in the background is Cornel West, the esteemed professor, former candidate for President of the United States, storming off the set with Piers Morgan during a debate on the death of Charlie Kirk. There's your prime example of exactly what you're talking about, dude. He couldn't handle it. How could a guy like Cornel West not handle Piers Morgan? How can Piers Morgan and Cornel West, a professor at Princeton, not have a civil discussion over the issue to the point that Cornel West gets so frustrated that he storms off the set? Isn't Princeton supposed to be an Ivy League university, one of the top universities in the country? Harvard, Princeton. I think isn't that right? Is Harvard supposed to be the top and Princeton supposed to be the next most esteemed university in the country? And a guy of the stature of Cornel West can't handle Piers Morgan? Whatever you thought about Charlie Kirk, he certainly can handle a debate without storming off like that. Just saying. Thank you, dude.
Yeah, it shows a lack of emotional intelligence. I'll just let
I think so. I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Thank you, dude. King, you're up.
Yeah, so I do understand why Cornel West would have stormed off. This has been a very difficult conversation to have, particularly with people who, again, lack of empathy, refusing to put themselves in another person's shoes, and their understanding of the environment, the rhetorical environment that all of this is surrounded by. And I'm not talking about from a partisanship perspective. I know that Cornel West has 2 kids, and one of his good friends, he has a well-known friendship with another scholar, Robert P. George, who is a profound conservative intellectual. I also know that Charlie Kirk and Cornel West have had engagements, personal engagements. I've heard them talk about their personal interactions over the last couple of days. But I'm sure that at the time he was probably trying to, I can only imagine, but I would guess that he was having a conversation about some of the words that have been spoken and why they are or are not problematic as it relates to marginalized groups. But I do agree with you that the motive doesn't really matter because, well, firstly, like I said, I don't think this is an issue of partisanship. The pattern that we've been seeing with young men, radicalized young men, lashing out because of the nihilistic indoctrination they've received online, is the through line. The same day that that young man shot Charlie Kirk, another young man shot up a school. 2 weeks before that, somebody else shot up another school. And this has been going on, right? I have thoughts about the partisan leaning that some of this indoctrination comes from, because I know of the Andrew Tates. I know about some of the messaging that have been reaching children as young as in junior high or middle school. A conversation that's starting to happen now online is that the parents of young people are looking at their kids like, okay, what do you know about a Groyper? What do you know about these people? I've never heard of Charlie Kirk. I've never heard of Nick Fuentes. And they're asking their children, and they're floored because their children are very aware of the memes. They've been exposed, is what I'm saying. And all of these new terms that these parents had no clue about or what they meant, the children are well versed in this. Some of those kids are going to fall deeper into those rabbit holes because of the algorithms, right? And it doesn't even matter the platform. There was a time where people felt more vulnerable going into places like the deep web, but people are being radicalized through TikToks and YouTube and Instagram, and the algorithms are playing a part in this. And so I think that is a way that people from a partisan's perspective can find some commonality about, because there are a lot of parents who are worried about the things in this that their kids are being indoctrinated with as it relates to violence and retrograde ideas. Like one of these things is because somebody in her class was suspended for standing up and saying Hitler was right, and so it provoked this conversation that wouldn't have otherwise happened with this parent and her daughter, right? And so I think that's the larger issue. And I think I'm willing to bet that, this person, like the other person who shot on campus, even though it was a high school campus, also have been exposed to this radicalization. And I think that we need to wake up and take our heads out of our asses as the adults and stop making it about us, or, because we know that both parties have their issues, both ideologies. Any ideology can be turned into something violent and terrible, right? For everyone that talks about, religion, we know that religion even has been used to perpetrate violence on other people. So it's really not about the partisanship. It's, in my opinion, it's about just the fact, the degree of radicalization that is happening amongst young children, and they're growing up with these ideas that are totally retrograde, and that everybody is clueless, and they have access to guns, right? So they have an arsenal, as well as the seed seeds of violence planted into their worldview, combined with a lot of hopelessness, a lot of confusion, and just a lot of hormones, So I do agree. I don't think that the motive matters that much. I think that there's a bigger issue, and because this can be used politically, that's why the motive is being as emphasized as it is. It's because this motive is being used as justification to clamp down on rights and speech and a whole lot of other freedoms that we've taken for granted up to this point. So I'll yield there.
Thank you, King. Brian.
Hi, Gary. Does the motive matter? I think it could if anybody cared. I think his motive, if it was analyzed by someone who cared, could cause maybe someone to look into why he did it and see if there was any corrections that might be made in the future to help prevent something like that from happening again. When Charlie was assassinated, there was so much blowback on social media that it kind of, I don't know what the word is, kind of incensed me in a way, because I was just learning what happened and didn't even know who Charlie was, but there was this blowback of people were blaming the left and there was so much I don't know how to describe it, just kind of blowback toward the left, and everyone was blaming them before the guy was caught, and really before the news story was out everywhere. So I don't think that any motive is going to change people's minds, and especially when like Scott and so many people already mentioned that the president and attorney general and all these major players on the right, or I should say MAGA, have it ingrained that it's the left. I think in a way that they're going to capitalize on that as much as they can leading into the midterms. It's going to with that and the gerrymandering, I think they're doing whatever they can to try and save and gain seats. Unfortunately, I think that's going to cause the problem to exasperate. I think it's just a matter of time before something else happens again, especially if we don't change course on the way people are talking. And I'm admitting that the blowback eventually went both ways, because it got real ugly as people was quoting Charlie and that type of thing. It's just an ugly situation that just does not seem to be to de-escalate. But I there's been some good comments so far, and I really don't have much to add, but thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Chris.
Damn it, Gary. How are you today, Gary?
Damn it, Chris. I'm doing fine.
Well, you ain't got to use your black accent, but I appreciate it. At least I know that you here. Hey, putting King and Brian in front of me is kind of the cheat code on shutting Chris up soon. Because a lot of the things I wanted to talk about has been said, and gratefully so. So let's get straight to it, so I'm not here wasting anybody else's time. Does Robinson's motive even matter? Yes, it does, to both sides, actually. Unfortunately, the investigation that we'll get will be skewed. The FBI working the case will be skewed. And that means photos will matter for the respected administration. Why? Because they can push the narrative that makes them happier. They can push the narrative, as Brian said, that can push them into midterms with a strong base, or try to find a strong base in the sake of a death. Which, I hate to say it, with how fast they moved as soon as the man's death was announced, they played their hand so fast that it was too obvious that you guys had ulterior motives on his death regardless. It could have been anybody from the right at this point, from the way that they're moving. They would have found a way to utilize it for their gain. Now, oh, poor sorry Charlie Kirk and his family, yeah, great. I'm there for you all. Whatever well wishes you want to send to them, I respect. but the way that the administration, who said that they were friends of Charlie Kirk, decided on utilizing Charlie Kirk's death in the aftermath to turn things into a hate-filled push, an agenda, and a distraction from what we previously seen coming down the pipeline from the gerrymandering, which was funny that you mentioned that. I believe that was Brian, because the gerrymandering has been looked over. Why? Because we have a new topic on our television screens. The same goes for the Epstein files. The Epstein files are now on the back burner. Why? Because we have to figure out about all these bad apples talking bad about Charlie Kirk. And guess what? Our Congress agreed. The Congress just pushed that stuff right out the back door and said, we'll figure that out eventually, if not ever. Because now we have a bigger fish to fry. People are being mean about Charlie. So the motives do matter for the right. Now, let's get to the left. The motives matter for the left too, because I'm not one of those people that says, well, they're playing it on both sides, because obviously the rhetoric that's being pushed on from the right is way more detrimental than the rhetoric that's been pushing on the left, and we'll get to that here shortly. But the left can also utilize from this. The left needs to utilize from this because, yes, we don't have all the information. We don't know if just because he had a right-leaning family that he was actually on the right. But what we do know is that the right decided to pull war out as soon as they could. And the left should be speaking to that. Hey, who are they at war with? The left should be speaking to the fact that who are the right declaring war on? Who are they upset with? They have every single aspect of government. They even have the Supreme Court in their pocket. And we can honestly say that with a straight face. The Supreme Court has done a lot of damage in the name of Donald Trump, the president. Let him do it. So the motives here just strictly goes back to, on the left side, hey, these guys said that this was a left-leaning thing. They said that the left is the danger. It's the left job to point the picture.
Well, the president said specifically the Democrats.
Yes, I mean, everybody on the right. I mean, you could turn on Fox News before you even seen the president, and the message was already out. I'm going to say that again. The message behind Charlie Kirk's death was out before Charlie Kirk's death. And the only way I can put that and say that in the way with so much vigor and understanding that I have a way more chance of being right than wrong is because the message was instant.
Yeah, and Charlie Kirk, by the way, is by all accounts to this point, this may change, was apolitical in terms of partisan politics. Something to take into consideration.
But the message, by the way, was instant. It took no time to get out the message across the Republican pundits that it's the right's fault, regardless of the information we have.
The left's fault, yeah.
Well, yes, the left's fault. I'm sorry. I do apologize. The left's fault that all of this stuff falls victim to. Before we knew who the guy was, before we even knew the video of him jumping off the back of the building in the Converses, before we realized that he broke down a gun in less than 2 seconds, we found out that it was all the Democrats' problem. That they pushed it and they pushed this and we need to go to war because it's time. Now, let's get back to the last point I wanted to make. It's exactly what Brian said. Man, King and Brian was cooking. And it might have been King that said this, but I want to give them both shout out for stating the fact that all this stuff is went underneath the radar of parents, of grown adults who consume politics on a daily basis. Okay? Let's understand how well they hid Charlie Kirk in plain sight. Let's understand how algorithmic they was able to hide Charlie Kirk and his message.
What do you mean they were hiding his message? I don't get the point.
What I mean by they were hiding his message, and I don't put a they with a person or a party. I'm saying Charlie was infectious to children. He was talking about who are you? And adults did not know that Charlie Kirk was talking to the youth. Remember when they had this is a whole problem. Let me give you an example, Gary.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. This is a whole problem that we have generationally with some people not understanding that what to them is a legacy way of getting information out. There's a whole different, like people said to, in fact, somebody I know in her 30s asked me, what's Discord? She's already too old to know what Discord is. So there are so many different ways of getting information out. Yes, the older generation, probably many, I mean, how many people came up to the each year and said, I'd never heard of Charlie Kirk.
And I think that's a terrible thing, but I do also understand and I sympathize with those people because a lot of those people are just not in the bubble of information, and that's fine. But go right ahead, because I do have a point that I want to make.
No. I'm just trying to explain why it is. Go ahead.
Okay, going back to my point, we all have to remember there was a time where they had children cartoons on YouTube. But in those same children cartoons, they had messages in those children cartoons with a little scary face thing that used to tell the kids to kill their parents and harm themselves. There was a cartoon on YouTube. If you are a parent, you may know this. That they had in the cartoons, they were putting hidden messages in. It was, I forgot what the Blippy or whatever the thing was called. But it was a true message being pushed to the youth, but the parents had no clue because they just give the kids the cartoons or the iPad. The iPad eventually puts it all in algorithmic, and it works on the children. We have to be more understanding on what and Gary, by the last thing, because you brought a great point, but I want to make sure I don't let this skip over. The Charlie Kirk situation wasn't just something that was undertoned by Charlie Kirk to push to the children. He had investors. He had backing. Somebody knew this message was getting pushed to Charlie.
Okay, so now you just taught me something that I didn't know. And I acknowledge.
I know you Googled it.
I acknowledge that I went to ChatGPT, and they reference the Wikipedia. And what it says is, and I was unaware of this. So there were disturbing child-targeted videos on YouTube and YouTube Kids.
Yep.
They contain hidden or spliced-in scenes,
yep,
urging self-harm or showing extreme violence.
Bang, bang.
And a number of parent reports and tabloids also circulated claims that some clips contain messages encouraging kids to harm others, including their parents.
Hey.
Major investigations in 2017 through 2019 documented the broader problem known online as Elspethgate. I don't know how I missed this.
Hey, again, don't worry, because the people miss Charlie Kirk too, and this man already passed away.
And related phenomena, and showed that malicious actors were slipping grotesque or instructional content into videos that looked child-friendly. Holy freaking
Hey, Gary, I'm going to jump off of this bridge with this one. Hey, I want you to also understand Charlie Kirk was doing something very similar. He was pushing a message behind the Christian belief.
Well, I don't know whether it was behind a Christian belief or not, but let me just say that whenever Charlie Kirk went onto a college campus and engaged in these debates, where, by the way, he overwhelmed the 17 and 18-year-old people who
they're unknowledgeable. They're children.
And he would often point out, I never went to college. I never went to college. And he was like Rush Limbaugh used to say, that he could debate you with one arm tied behind his back, kind of thing. That's what Charlie Kirk was doing. But he always learned there, and they would extrapolate from these long exchanges, 20-second clips that went on TikTok and Instagram, and that's how he propagandized his message. He was absolutely brilliant at it, but that's what was going on.
All right, Gary, I'm at the home run. This is the home run, so I want you to all pay attention to what I stated. There was once an organization, and I'll just use organization because we don't know who the persons was or people was that were putting together those videos on children, who actually had a plan to manipulate your children without your knowing. Again, not trying to discredit Charlie Kirk or the message of does Robinson motive even matter? Yes, it matters on both sides, but I want people to understand that, yes, you may not have known who Charlie Kirk is, but understand the system does. And the system knew exactly that you guys wouldn't know who Charlie Kirk was until it was too late. And children are being indoctrinated with information that is not always true, but sometimes hateful. And that's where it gets sticky, because this type of stuff can go over the radar of the adults. Even a Gary who is in this type of media did not understand that children were being harmed by YouTube videos. And this is the same situation we're currently looking at. So I don't want everybody to think that, he hates Charlie Kirk. Hey, he's a human with family and children. I wish he thought about them people more. But the truth of the matter is, people are being indoctrinated from underneath the radar. And our system does understand that. They are literally understanding that you.
So I'm just gonna suggest.
Thank you.
I did a little deeper dive into this. There were a lot of investigations by researchers and by journalists, and they couldn't really pinpoint who was behind it, but they found out that these videos were generated by overseas content firms. According to this article in ChatGPT, again, I have not time to check their research, which if I was doing a story, I would have to go beyond just what I'm seeing here. So I'm presenting this with a grain of salt. According to what ChatGPT is saying here, the main motivation was money, exploiting YouTube's algorithm to get clicks from kids. But I don't know, because the subliminal information, I don't think had anything to do with money. And I'm wondering.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you the subliminal gain you more access to money?
Right. But what I'm wondering is, given what we know about Russia and other foreign actors using the internet to cause division among Americans and in the various European countries, among the citizens of those countries, it would not surprise me if we ultimately learn that it was something like that was behind all of this, to try to corrupt our society even more than it's corrupt now. Chris, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I was totally unaware of this.
Also, Gary, I just only wanted to say, and for purposes or even reason for the people in the room, I only wanted to bring that up because the information that was being spread was under the radar of the adults that should have been understanding to check those videos. Watch the videos for 15 minutes before you allow your children to watch those 15-minute videos. That's my whole point. A lot of this stuff just goes over the adult's head, and then we find out later on that, oh man, this was probably hurting my child, and the parent can be a great parent. It just ends up being something that does not work in the message that you want to give your child.
They're giving sub-teens, children, smartphones to keep them busy, keep them out of the parents'
Basically.
That's really a problem. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
That's really, really interesting stuff. Steve. Oh, by the way, it's now 5:58, so we will not be adding anybody to the stage. However,
we have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspects.
See corrosive elements starting to have a corrosive impact on the country. I think they need to be identified, and they need to be identified not in the way that Trump's talking about. Let's go out and hunt them down and prosecute them, or Bondi's talking about prosecuting someone for talking about something. That's not what I'm talking about. More on an intellectual level, where you can draw those forces that are being corrosive out into the light, where they have to articulate to the general population that might reject this line of thought. I think that's what is producing the kind of action that we've seen. Then we'll kick off flat-footed. And it's more to where the society, left and right, can expose the corrosive elements on either side. And like I say, corrosive elements, when exposed to the thoughtful interrogation of the idea, usually falls apart. And if you do that, then you invalidate the argument. So, just like with Lincoln, was just Booth his motivation for shooting Lincoln? Was it important? I think it was, because it to my point, it indicated that within society, even though the country had been through a traumatic event, there still was a lingering problem that needed to be addressed culturally within the greater society. So if we have these elements, and like I say, it's both ways. There's nut jobs on the right, there's nut jobs on the left. political parties are not immune to this type of poison that can seep in. So either way, when those types of things are allowed to germinate in darkness, and they're allowed to germinate without being examined with critical thought from reasonable people, which I think most of our country is, then they can metastasize into an event like this. So that's the reason I think it is kind of important to address it before it evolves into a tragic situation and we find ourselves at each other's throats, Gary.
So to your point, excellent points, by the way, but to your point, would you argue then that since we don't yet know the motivation, that we should not speculate and not cast aspersions upon one another based on what we speculate the motivation is?
Well, I guess it would depend, to your question on that point, at what point, based on the investigation on all the elements that we know, do we say we haven't reached a tipping point in drawing a conclusion? I guess what I'm trying to say is, how much more information do we need to draw a conclusion, and are we drawing it prematurely? You may be correct. And everybody can fall victim to that because passions become inflamed and you have presupposed ideas about people and things that you can become irrational at some point. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I just don't know that from my point of view, that based on the information I've seen, that maybe I need that much more. I could have a huge blind spot here, Gary, and it may be related to my affiliation. And I'll leave it there.
What's been going on in my mind a little bit is, and we don't know if this is true, but supposedly there's some kind of a transgender issue here, because he had a romantic relationship with a transgender roommate. And we know that a recurring theme when Charlie Kirk was on campus, he would be challenged by folks who were transitioning, were furry babies, were people wearing the clothes of typically worn by people of a gender other than the one that was, as they say today, assigned at birth. And there was all these contentious discussions about transgenderism. And in that community, a lot of people felt that Charlie Kirk was a hateful person for the comments that he made. I'm not arguing that he was. I'm not arguing that he wasn't. I think it's fair to observe that a lot of people who confronted him on college campuses, and this was a recurring theme, felt that way about him. I also know, I can say this anecdotally, I don't have any research. I'm sure there is research to support or dispel what I'm about to say, that there are people who identify as transgender or transitioning, who I have met in my lifetime, who identify as conservatives, and there are people who are transitioning who identify as liberals. It's not a political position. It's not like I'm going to show how liberal I am, or I'm a liberal so I can transgender, but if you're a conservative, you can't. It's not that. It's a personal choice, whether you agree with it or not, whether you take Charlie Kirk's position or you feel that people have the right to make that choice is not the issue. I say this to suggest, from what the county prosecutor said today, there was a message between Robin Manson and his roommate, in which he said that he was going to kill Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk is a hateful person. It's very possible, and I just want to send out this proposition. I'm not arguing that this is the case, but I think it's possible that this was obviously an act of hate. Anytime you kill somebody, it's an act of hate. Generally, when you kill somebody, it's an act of hate. There's some exceptions, like self-defense. But this was obviously an act of hate. By his own admission, it was an act of hate. But it may not have been a partisan, political, or political ideological act of hate. It may just be this guy is influential in drumming up opposition to being a trans individual. He's a hateful person, so I'm going to kill him. It may have nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans, conservatives or liberals. And it may turn out that it was politically motivated along partisan lines. But at this point, we don't know. And that's why I don't understand why the nation is like screaming and pointing fingers at one another when we don't know. Don't let facts get in the way of a good argument. I guess is what's going on in our society, Steve.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I haven't heard it articulated that way, Gary. That's a very, very, very salient point there, and that could be. Actually, I hadn't considered the way you phrased it.
I'm not saying that I'm right, but I am saying there's a possibility that that's the motivation.
Yeah, I know. And that's true. I mean, you should consider all possibilities when you look at something like this. And that's actually one I hadn't considered. Good point, Gary.
Thank you, Steve. Meryl, has Pam Bondi knocked your door? Yeah.
She's knocking at my door. I know. Today, I was reading everything that was being written. And I started to think, oh my gosh, I want to kill these people. I want to kill people on the right. Oh my gosh. Because it was so, that's what people on the left do. And by the way, who are the people on the left? I'm so confused. I can't articulate this.
Can I please interject and tell folks who may not understand that Meryl is being facetious? Because some people will take you literally and they're going to say, Meryl said she wants to kill everybody on the right. And I know that's not what you mean, and I just want to clarify that.
Yes, I was being facetious. I felt like somebody was saying that about me. So I felt like a lot of people were doing that. I don't know how to articulate this well. I liked what you just said about, might not be about, it's about hate, but it might not be so much politically motivated. And I have often thought that when you have a person who's the sole shooter and you don't associate him with a group, you don't associate him that way, that person has been affected personally by something that the victim has done. And he has, and I do feel that this could very well be the case. I also think that a big problem that we have is when we start saying this person, it's on the right is the most violent, or the left is the most violent, we tend to elevate the person who's just been killed. I don't know that Charlie Kirk should be elevated any more than Melissa Horton, the House of Representatives, the head of the House of Representatives in Minnesota, who she and her husband were killed. And nobody really.
I think the husband survived, right? But she was killed.
No, they were both killed, and their dog. There's someone else who was killed. He was shot, and his wife was shot. That's two other Democrats that night. But no, they were both killed, and their dog, and their children are orphans now. And who talked about them? Did anybody talk about them the next day? And I sit and I feel that when we start talking about
Melissa Hortman, she was a Democratic state representative, formerly Speaker of the House, and her husband, you were correct to correct me, fatally shot in their home in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. You're right.
And so we have elevated by when we start attributing motives, we have then looked at Charlie Kirk. We've elevated him as much as he did in life. He's been elevated much more in death, and I don't think that we should do that. I think Bernie Sanders was right. I think your opening speech was right, as short as it was. I do think that we should. It's time for us to say, okay, enough. Now we're going to stop this. How do we stop it? There's so many reasons why we should. And this is how I feel right now. I feel that we need to put an end to it. I don't think we need to keep showing, have a contest. This group is more radical than that group. Because there's another thing that we don't know. We don't know on a daily basis. We don't know how many people get killed or how much domestic abuse there is that are started because of a political argument. We don't know that. We don't know about all the threats that come in that the FBI is keeping us from. We don't know all of these things. So we've got to be, and I just think we need to be more careful. But I want to stress that when we start saying it's more on the right or more on the left, we start to elevate people that maybe shouldn't be elevated. Maybe everybody should be looked at the same way. Thank you.
Here, Meryl.
Pardon?
He said, here, Meryl.
Who's that? Thank you.
Marshall.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marshall.
So across the aisle. Thank you, Meryl. Double.
Hi, Gary. Yeah, it's been an interesting discussion. Didn't know about the YouTube hidden.
I know. I thought he was like blowing it out his ear.
Yeah, it sounds.
I said, what the hell are you talking about? Oh my God.
I do appreciate, directionally the idea that people are coming for your children. They want to corrupt your children. A lot of people think if they want to change society, they want to start early and get them while they're young. And he's right to point out Charlie Kirk saw that opening in the market, as did some others. I think Ben Shapiro has been on college campuses quite a bit. Speaking, you have even further right, even more problematic people like Milo Yiannopoulos. Although when he shows up to campuses, the protests often were so extreme that he would sometimes be uninvited. Like I believe that happened. Yeah, but I mean, it's fair. That's what colleges are. We infantilize college students, unfortunately, but that really used to be considered that as your real maturation phase where you're meant to contend with all the ideas in the world, however offensive or disturbing or mature or whatever they might be, that you now have to address learn, understand, process, debate, and that is part of your graduation into adulthood.
To that point, Double, I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon, and I'm looking back and blah, 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 like that. But I think my observation is pretty spot on, based on some of the clips and they're all over the place now. And Meryl is actually right. He's bigger than life now, bigger in death than he was in life, Charlie Kirk. So the algorithms now are causing these clips, to which I referred earlier, to pop up on my Facebook and on my Instagram. And I see people coming to the microphone to debate Charlie Kirk having great difficulty articulating their thoughts. And some of them even are referring to something that they read on the internet, and they're holding their phones and reading off the phones when they're trying to debate Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk would say, look at me. Don't look at your phone. Look at me. And when I was in college, my recollection, I may be looking at this through rose-colored glasses, was that we had very vibrant debates. I was in the Vietnam War era. We had immense discussions about the war, and people could sit down, usually over a beer at the local pub, and we could have an articulate, mature discussion about communism and the domino theory and exploitation and empire building and all that kind of stuff. All these various views were discussed. The military-industrial complex, but we need a strong military to protect us. People had varying points of view, and we would discuss them, and we could all articulate very well, I think, and then we would go our separate ways and remain friends. But when I saw and I don't know, maybe most of the clips, most of the interactions he had were not like this, but so many of the clips showed people sputtering while trying to talk to him. These are university students. What the hell?
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary. I think we've dramatically, the inflation of, even if you adjust for monetary inflation, the inflation of the cost of universities and the inflation or the expansion of the administrations in universities and the profit motive there has corrupted these institutions. Don't really, you're allowing people in who don't have the cognitive abilities or education to be there.
Or the other thing that's happening, and I can speak to this anecdotally, I don't have any statistics to back this up, but I know of many cases where the student is articulate, the student is very intelligent, but the student kind of goes against the grain of the norm on the campus and is shut down. And it's like, well, wait a minute. As you pointed out, it's supposed to be the forum for open discourse about many issues, and yet people in the minority, whatever that minority might happen to be, are not given the opportunity to articulate their feelings, their beliefs, their arguments without being shunted by the other, shunned by the other students on the campus, and sometimes by the professors themselves.
Yeah, I agree. And, people are claiming, I heard someone I respect greatly on Clubhouse earlier today saying, if you send your child to, one of these northern or certainly northeastern universities, you are basically signing them up to be indoctrinated into a religious ideology that will push them to, change their gender and become, radically opposed to.
I think that's an overstatement, but I think there's a greater acceptance of that, perhaps on the campus and in general society. But that nobody on the campuses are trying to get people to change their gender, and they're getting indoctrinated.
It happened to my cousin, Gary. It happened to my cousin. But
go talk to your cousin and ask your cousin.
We're out of touch. I think we as older people are, to the point of the earlier caller, I think even we are out of touch in just how, and I think that you saw it in that clip and seeing a kid said something slightly counter to the group think and was immediately shamed into submission. And like that is...
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about right now. You're taking it to another level. I'm going to let you go.
I'm just telling you what that group think is.
Check with your cousin and see when that cousin started having feelings of transition.
I'm not just talking about transition. I'm just talking about the overall theme of, what some people would call the woke religion, Gary.
Yeah, but you just said that people would be pushed into becoming transgender.
Trans is just one aspect of.
Well, I'm just responding to what you said. I got to run. Thank you, Double.
Thank you very much.
We go to Shadow. Shadow, you're up.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Man, my ADD is on overload right now, so I don't even really know.
Medical condition. You're just part of society, buddy.
Right. Yeah. So, does the motive really matter? Like, I really don't. I wouldn't say it does, because, I mean, you can be presented with, especially a specific side. I won't say which. Will be presented with facts, and then the story will always be spun in some sort of fashion. I mean, for example, if you want to dig into the data, like I've posted it in the chat, I've sent it in your back channel as well, Gary. But if we're talking about let's say Tyler Robinson, he was born in Utah. He went to a conservative school, raised by a conservative family. All of those data points would point to that he could be a conservative, because that's the way he grew up. But the fact that he was in a queer quote unquote relationship, does that make him part of the left?
No,
I don't know.
No, that just means that was his sexual preference or orientation or experimentation. It has nothing to do with his partisan political positions.
Right. So yeah, I don't really know what to say about that particular story. I mean, honestly, he could just be a crazy person, and it should just be left at that. But again, the data that I added in your chat, if you go to it's by the Cato Institute, and then I think it's SUNY, the New York University. I forget what the acronym means, but if you look
State University of New York is SUNY, State University of New York.
State University, there it is. If you look into the data, it's pointing to a particular side. If you look at right after 9/11, the data shows that most of the violence was caused by Islamism. I don't know why they would include international crimes into that. I felt like that part of it was kind of skewed. But if you look at all of the tables, the data is pointing to a specific side, which is the right, and all of the ideological homicides that have happened over the years. And then the state college, the State University of New York, State University of New York data also points to all the homicides that happened prior to 2000 onward to 2016. It's by the right. And the data is there. One of the tables shows the number out of 269. It leans towards the right, and then the table right under it is out of 469. It's clear as day where the violence is coming from. But even with that data presented,
what does the partisan bent to political violence have anything to do with it? Why are we taking their political view into account? Isn't the violence just bad because it's murder?
My point was just that if you're presented with facts, people will still always spin it in some way or fashion. But I'm just presenting. This isn't my study. This is where it's coming from. So that's all I was pointing out.
Okay, no.
Anecdotally, recently, the victims of political violence have tended to be people on the right, with the exception of what happened in Minnesota. By the way, breaking news out of London, where the president is on a state visit. I'm kind of chuckling about this. Somebody projected these big images of Trump and Epstein onto their castle. And poor people got arrested for that. But you got to see the video of this. I'm sure you'll find it all over the damn place. Holy cow. That is pretty cool, actually, I thought. Shadow, thank you. Danny?
Yeah, no problem.
Gary, I think you are one of the few speakers since this topic started. Talk about potential exploitation by foreign actors. I think this is something that we need to look into. It's not recent. It has been planted in decades, and because even the professor are infected, right? It means something quite long. But the good thing is, after all this discussion you brought out, the picture start to seem very clear, and there is a solution. I always look for solution. It's not. It is time that both sides have to come together. Yeah, this is good. Just like here, there's an opportunity of healing because we get to hear both sides of view. Platform like that, and we need to figure out how to scale so that both sides can come together and look at it and figure out both sides could contribute to the solution. It's not one side; it's both sides. Because from what I hear is the Thompson already hear something. Charika is coming. I think he heard it like 1 week earlier. So, and he's already keyboard, right? Say, I have the opportunity to kill him now, blah, blah, something like that. So, and that, I feel like the motivation is based on transgender identity things. And I'm foreign to this topic, but as I debate in Clubhouse, occasionally I come across people want me to put this topic as equal status as protection of Western civilization. I was like, what are you talking about? I was trying to minimize this important, but I think these people are really feeling their voice are not being heard, and they are feeling a lot of challenges and threats from multiple ways. And I'm guilty of it. I just put less important, but I'm not like discriminate, right? But I think they want their voice to be heard, and they're feeling a lot of threat, and they amplified it, and the killer of Charles Kirk took that response, right? And I think so. I did ChatGPT and asked a couple of questions. What is this transgender motivated violence compared to political violence? I asked this question. It come up with very nice arrangement. It will take me some time to figure out how to organize it in a very coherent point. I urge you all to ask this question to the ChatGPT. And I think, is this motivated politically? I think from the time Charlie Kirk was killed, I mean, from the Republican point of view, Charlie Kirk in the way is a very rare person. He has a lot of talent, and he still have a lot of things that he expected to do, but he just being killed too early. And the Republican side is shocked. And they need to figure out an answer and revenge. And just like the same thing, when Lincoln got killed, and because it was just a few days before a Southern Confederate surrender, so someone has to figure out a revenge. And so the Republican side is acting on this, right? But I hope they realize that. Again, I don't want to take out too much time, but I somehow figure. So it has many things. When Trump take over, he's very hard. Common sense. You're either male and female. He took it very hard, and he pushed it, and it's taking it too fast because this concept has been cooking for many years, and this community need time to adjust to Trump's approach to very hard, very quick change. And so this community have no time to respond. And this is also politically motivated in the sense that when Trump is running for re-election, Charlie Kirk is understand the position of the party from the religion point of view, from Christianity point of view. Again, that is something also the Republican side had to look at it. How hard should one look at to pro-life, transgender thing? Because most of the discussion I heard the student coming in, just like you say, they were looking at handy and start asking questions. They are all immature in their understanding what pro-life and what transgender and so on. So, so what I want to say is there is a solution and it's a good opportunity, and both sides have to step back, and both sides have to understand in the end, you are American. Your enemy is foreign and not among yourself. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Dave, AC, and then Steve will get the last word. AC.
All right. Thank you, Gary. This has been a phenomenal room, but to be concise, so does Robinson's motive even matter? My perspective, when I first heard the name Tyler Robinson, I was saying in my head, please don't be a black guy. 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 And the reason being is this is a single most important element of this entire thing. I almost did a room saying called the Kirk Alert. Which minority group are they going to scapegoat for the killing of Charlie Kirk? And I think that my experience, living in America, is that when something happens like this, there's typically a scapegoat, and the revenge on that demographic is going to be tremendous. There's going to be a tremendous amount of spite and vengeance for whatever group is assigned this, whether it is.
I continue to say that I was thinking, please don't be a Jewish guy. So.
I was like, there's going to be a tremendous amount of vengeance for whatever demographic it is, whether it is Democrats, whether it is the LGBT community, Black community. I know when COVID first happened, I was like, if this is anything to do with China, then all Asian people are going to have to deal with this. When 9/11 happened, I was like, if this has anything to do with...
By the way, a lot of Asian people were attacked on the streets of the United States.
Yeah.
And even if they had been Chinese, what does that have to do with anything? They had nothing to do with what happened over there.
Exactly. And so the reason why I was saying, please don't be a black guy, is because I know that I'm going to have to deal with... I live in the Bay Area, right? And next to Berkeley and San Francisco, and I don't have anything to do with that, but how America kind of works, right, is somebody has to get the blame, and there has to be some sort of revenge or vengeance, and then that happens for a long period of time. I know when Obama was leaving office for his second term, there was all these police shootings of black people. It was like every week and every day, and to me, I took that as a message, as we are reclaiming our country or whatever. So there's lunatics on both sides, and so I think that this is the single most important part of this, because as soon as a narrative is established, there's going to be groups that are basically going to commit acts of terror. And so ever since this Kirk shooting has happened, I've kind of been on edge, because it just feels like we are waiting to hear what the facts are. And as soon as the country gets the facts and we can establish a narrative of whose fault it is, then that group is going to experience some sort of revenge terror attack. And so that's my point of view on it. But I think it's the most important element of this entire story.
Nobody else has brought that up. It's really important. I'm glad you did. Thank you, AC. Steve, you get the last word.
Thank you. Gary, so glad I've been listening to your show today. Literally, I have a 22-year-old blood niece, just graduated UCLA speech communication degree. She's going to her master's program at Northwestern in journalism. By the way, Gary, I don't know if you knew, but that's only like a 12 or 14-month program.
I've actually trained interns from the Northwestern School of Journalism, which it's debatable who's got a better J school, Hofstra or people who say NYU or Columbia, but it's really Hofstra and Northwestern. Those are the top two in Gary's esteemed professional opinion. So good luck to her.
Thank you. But Gary, up until an hour ago, I had no concerns about her sexuality, because she started UCLA at 18, straight female, graduated UCLA, straight female, but now she's going to one of those Northwestern schools or whatever. I'm concerned about her coming out transitioning into a man.
Where that comes from.
But that being said, I wanted to comment on what you said about debating and how you debated back in the 60s, or you had conversations in the 60s, and people debated Kirk recently. Now, I have not seen any of the Kirk debates, but I've been involved in debates. I've seen debates. I've listened to debates. And Gary, you among all people will attest that a good debater can debate both sides. Nobody belongs in a debate if they cannot have at least a modicum of information that they've studied. And what I presume what's been said today as far as Charlie Kirk debating college students, and they have to go to their phones to look up Google or Chat GPT or whatever, to me that means they have not done the proper preparation for that discussion or that debate. There's an old cliche, Gary, you've probably heard it. Preparation plus opportunity equals luck, okay? And I just find that a lot of people, not all people, a lot of people are taking the easy way out. They are not doing the basics, the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s of critical thinking, which is to put the time in, do the research, distinguish your fact from opinion, and then develop your own conclusions and your own arguments. They're taking the easy way out, and I'll land it here, Gary, because I know you.
This is a Democrat liberal vote show. Gary, Scott, and Alan, three sailors.
It is hard to do proper preparation. It's easy to spend 10 or 15 minutes, get some sound bites, get some headlines, and think you can come off as doing well. Nothing substitutes for proper preparation. And Gary, thanks again. Bye.
You're 100% correct. Thank you, Steve. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. New York time. So until 5 p.m. New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
Was patient. I've lost things. He's been killed.
More people talking about nothing and wasting all their time. Welcome back, everyone. Another exciting show where we record people talk about nothing and waste all their time.
I mean, I'm seeing some people saying that all
Call me a hypocrite. Call me a critic. But I'll let you judge. Is this a waste of time?
Has UN, United Nations, kind of agreed to it, or they declared that? I mean, if United Nations was the perfect source, people were being killed. Nobody talks about that. There are so many people killed all around the world. Then, I mean, United Nations do shit. In Iran, we consider United Nations a kind of, I would say, a sham. There are so many countries in the world, and they come with their own bias. So, of course, yes, it's an international organization, but it doesn't mean that they are free from bias or lobbyists. If they were really on the true side of the history, on the side that tells the truth, stands for truth, they would have stand for our people, for Iranian people.